Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports columnist and New York Times bestselling author. He's been working on the Michigan situation. What do you think is going to happen today with Michigan, if anything?
I don't think anything will happen today. I think we'll go tomorrow, and it'll be down to what the Big Ten wants to do. Michigan's going to respond today to the Big Ten, and then I think the Big Ten will probably have a decision tomorrow or maybe Friday. Do they want to suspend Jim Harbaugh indefinitely? That is on the table until the end of the NCAA investigation. Do they want to just give him 2 games? 3 games would be the rest of the regular season, 2 games, or they could back off and not do anything. But it's a precarious spot for Harbaugh right now, considering what the Big Ten is sending out there as possible punishments.
Do you think there's a negotiation going on between Michigan and the NCAA and or Big Ten?
Oh, there's absolutely a negotiation going on. I don't know whether they will reach any negotiation. We'll see how dug in everybody is. You know, it's hard to. We've never seen this, Dan. I mean, a commissioner suspending a head coach, let alone of a winning team in the middle of the season. I've been covering college athletics for a couple decades. I've never heard anything like this in this element. Not, they went after the ref too hard or something like that. But while there's an investigation going on, and I think. Look, what Connor Stallions did was clearly an attempt to violate the rules and to help Michigan. If the NCAA's now 3-week investigation had covered any ties or knowledge, proof that Jim Harbaugh knew, or even up to like his coordinators knew, then Harbaugh should be fired immediately by Michigan. But that hasn't materialized. So to make this big of an aggressive move when an investigation's ongoing, and it's not like, hey, there's a text message here saying, hey, Connor, you should go to the Central Michigan game. Oh, thanks, Coach Harbaugh. Should I wear the sunglasses? Yes, absolutely. Like if you got something like that, gone. But without that kind of any knowledge, and it appears, we'll see. Maybe they find something today, but they haven't found anything. This is a unprecedented move, and so unprecedented negotiations, and really no one knows what the Big Ten will do. But it is quite a precedent for the Big Ten to make a move on Jim Harbaugh in the middle of an investigation.
Yeah, I keep cautioning people, like, due process. Let's just let it play out. Everybody wants to get to the end of the story, suspend Harbaugh. Michigan can't play for a national championship. I want to know what is there. Like, we keep hearing that could have happened. Everything's on the periphery. I need to know exactly, okay, you got Jim Harbaugh in Michigan dead to rights. This guy acting on his own. Did he share the information with a coordinator? Did that coordinator tell Jim Harbaugh? Is Jim Harbaugh sort of the way Pitino was at Louisville? Hey, he didn't know about the hookers, but he should have known about the hookers.
Right.
I'm waiting for the there, Dan.
Well, there's a couple things here, and be clear, I'm not saying that Michigan just should escape penalty or they didn't violate the rules, but I think there is perspective that needs to happen. And two things. Nobody cared about sign stealing until 3 weeks ago. I mean, nobody cared about sign stealing. Yeah. They steal their signs, each other's signs. They advance scout all the time. They just have their friends and other coaching staffs hand over their work. This is that the whole scandal's like out of nowhere because of somebody investigated this and hoped the NCAA and the Big Ten would overreact. And we have overreacted. So we're going to see whether they still will overreact. But this is not the biggest scandal on earth. That said, it is something. What we have a lot of, and a lot of the way this story was framed, is anonymous coaches screaming that he should have known, he must have known, he had to have known, all that stuff. And Tony Batiti having meetings with the coaches and the ADs of the other schools and listening to them, like, that's the last group you would listen to. I wouldn't want to hear Jim Harbaugh's opinion on something going on at Ohio State, because I would just dismiss it out of hand. So a lot of this is like, well, this is this is terrible, this is awful. They're doing the same thing, just in a different way. They all are stealing signs, and they are all using advanced scouts, depending on how you define them, in different ways to steal those signs. And so you can't, I caution, I don't really care what happens here, right? I caution anybody who says, an organization that says, well, we're just going to go on it because we're going to suspend Jim Harbaugh for the rest of the year because we think he should have known. That isn't how it should work. And if it's too slow or whatever, but what if he didn't? I mean, on the second day of this, I looked at this case differently than most. And I thought, what I see is Connor Stalions. This was my possible theory on the case. And maybe it proves to be wrong. It hasn't yet. Connor Stalions is a guy in his 20s, overeager, wants to be the Michigan head coach one day, has a 600-page manifesto about how he'll be the head coach and what he'll do. He gets attention as a young coach for being able to decipher these codes and break the codes. And he's from the Naval Academy, and he's selling himself as this wizard at it. And Michigan knows he's stealing the codes. They know they're breaking down the signals. They just don't know how he's putting his thumb on the scale to be so good at it. He's not going to volunteer that information because it makes him look guilty, get him fired, or less of a genius. So he's pumping himself up and not telling anyone. Most conspiracies in this country, although everyone wants to believe they're vast, they're usually very small. I don't think there's a very, very plausible case that he told no one and acted on his own. I don't know that that's it, but there's a very plausible explanation of that. I think everybody, including the NCAA and the Big Ten, went running in saying, Harbaugh had to know, everybody had to know, Michigan had to know. And when you're going in on that route and then you're not even doing due process, you put yourself over a barrel and you open Pandora's box. And so whether Jim Harbaugh gets suspended or not, or Michigan gets punished, many of those things should happen. I just would caution anyone to just say, well, we have one worldview here, and it's because a bunch of other football coaches who aren't really paying attention, aren't really deep thinkers, just want Jim Harbaugh gone. That's a dangerous way for the NCAA and the Big Ten to operate. And it's dangerous for all the other coaches too, because today it's Harbaugh, tomorrow it's you.
If I said that you could find out what Harbaugh knew or find out who gift wrapped this investigation for the NCAA, well,
which would I choose?
Yeah.
I'm of the belief Harbaugh didn't know. Now, should he have been more curious? Should he have been more? I think I know that. I think Harbaugh didn't know. Should he have been more curious? Should he have been more walking in that grad assistant room yelling, anybody breaks a rule and costs me my job, I'm going to kill you. All that stuff. He's a terrible manager of his staff, right? He's got all sorts of problems. It's not pertinent to the case who hired the PI. It doesn't matter. But I don't really care I don't care about sign stealing. I don't care what Michigan's part. As purely a media vulture, yeah, I want to know who hired them. Because somebody hired them hoping the NCAA would fall for the okie doke and go with this and not think this through. And it worked perfectly. And if nothing else than to tip my cap at whoever plotted this thing out, they weren't really outraged by sign stealing, is my guess. There's not a sign stealing, hardcore anti-sign stealer out there that just said, this is too much. They wanted to get Michigan. They got Michigan. For the soap opera aspect that I like, I'd want to know that.
Good to talk to you, Dan. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan.
Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports columnist, New York Times best-selling author. Yeah, we've talked about if these other schools are sharing signs, are they guilty of doing sort of the same thing that Michigan is guilty of, or at least accused of? Maybe we find out something today. Maybe Michigan is trying to negotiate something here. Jim Harbaugh keeps saying it never got to him. Maybe it didn't. But let's let it play out. It's when we jump to the end because everybody has to have a hot take. Don't have a hot take. Make a phone call. Do some investigation. Report on this. Not, oh, he must be guilty. Okay. Oh, you got to fire him. Okay. I just want to know, a couple of things. Did the coordinators know anything? And that's where I would ask. I would start there with the coordinators with Michigan. If I'm Big Ten, I go, come on in. Who did he share the information with? Did you two coordinators get any information? They got two really good coordinators, by the way, at Michigan, offense and defensive coordinator. I just want to know. He shared that information with you. Did you share that with Coach? All right. Get my answers there. At least start there. But as far as suspending him, 2 games, $10,000, that's what they're allowed to. But if it goes for more than that, if you suspend him indefinitely, does Michigan fight this? Michigan fights this until the end of the season. They're still investigating Michigan for what happened during COVID with recruiting. They're not going to get around to this till Harbaugh is in the NFL in a couple of years. Or maybe back in college after being in the NFL. Like, man, oh man.